Hello, welcome back to part 2. And you may be wondering, dude, Jeff, it's been a week. Why are you wearing the same clothes? Well, because I'm filming part 2 at the same time. I'm sorry, this is how YouTube works, okay? So just sit back, relax, and enjoy part 2 of the 10 things you need to know about new construction in Metro Detroit. And we're gonna pick up with number 6 because we went through 1 through 5 last week. And if you missed it, 1 through 5, we talked a lot about the types of builders, the financing, the deposit, how the money works. Worth a listen. So stop now if you haven't watched it. Go watch part 1 and then come back and watch part 2 after you're done. So again, Jeff Packer here, broker, owner, and team leader of the Packer Group. And we are dedicated to bringing educational content to you to help you make the best real estate decisions of your life. So number 6 thing you need to know when it comes to new construction in Metro Detroit: expectations, especially expectations on the end product. But here's what I've found, especially being here in Detroit, where a lot of times we think about manufacturing and manufacturing a car. And we have many people who understand the car manufacturing process because we have plenty of plants here in Detroit that do so. The tolerances of perfection when it comes to a car are so much smaller than when it comes to a house. You have to understand, you are taking imperfect land, building a house on it, disturbing that soil, putting a foundation in, then everything's gonna settle over time. You're putting natural products like wood framing onto that structure. It expands and contracts depending on temperature and humidity and how much moisture is already in the wood. So there's all of that stuff to consider. And then you're putting rigid materials such as drywall and trim, cabinets, things like that, that are more rigid, who don't shift as much as, say, the framing would. And you're expecting it all to stay perfectly together and never have imperfections. It's just not realistic. And so having somebody who's been through the process and can help shape those expectations for you can improve your experience. And then on top of that, we know what sort of things should definitely be much better than what the builder delivered it to you versus the things that, no, this is probably the best it's gonna get. And so we wanna help shape those expectations, but you need to know that your expectations will change a lot as you go through that process. On top of that, as you own that home over the next 1 to 2 to 3 years, the home will shift and make changes and settle. And so understanding that process as well is important. And every builder is a little bit different in terms of how they service you after the closing process. Are they gonna be really good about coming back and helping fix some of those imperfections, or are they gonna leave you high and dry? And all of these things will dictate your level of experience and whether it was a good, bad, or mediocre experience. And so we wanna help you have as good of an experience as possible, and that starts with expectations. So we wanna help shape those expectations. You need to have proper expectations when you're going into the build process. That brings me to the selection process. That is the 7th thing you need to know. So depending on the builder, production builder, you're gonna have a very limited selection process. And you will have to choose from, say, 8 different cabinets for your kitchen and your vanities, maybe 10 different granites, maybe 8 different tiles, so there's all these different selections that you make, and they certainly do their best to make sure they've got the trendiest, coolest, most fad design features for you to choose from. But understand, they're limited to what they offer, and that's it. The smaller the builder, oftentimes the smaller the selection options. The larger the builder, maybe you get a bigger breadth of selections. But at the end of the day, you are limited to those selections. Now, custom builder or a semi-custom builder. You might have all the selections in the world to you, but what you're limited on is then the budget. They would give you like, hey, for the flooring in your house, you have $20,000 budget. Go pick whatever you want, but it has to be 20 grand or less. And anything above 20 grand, you're paying extra out of pocket for. And so this is a dangerous thing. I've seen so many couples who blow 50, 60, 80, 100, maybe even 200,000 over budget because they cannot figure out how to pick the best selections for themselves within their budget. And again, it's very easy to justify, well, this is our forever home. We want it exactly the way we want it. And if you don't have somebody helping you stay grounded, that could be an issue. But here's the thing, and this is a shameless plug. So the Packer Group also owns TPG Staging and Design. TPG Staging and Design has a special offering in which we will come in and help. My designer will come in and help make selections. So whether that's with a production builder or a custom built home, depending on the level of help and effort that you need, how many hours she may work for you will depend on what extra cost there would be there. But I can tell you, I've seen clients do it on their own, and I've seen clients who have hired our designer. And the ones that hire our designer have always said it was the best money they spent during the build process because they made sure that everything was tied together. Look, like I told you earlier in part 1, I've been through this process. I built a home. My wife and I were still married. And I will tell you, we had our designer come in and make selections. Now, really, it was my wife and the designer making the selections. And I just said, yep, whatever you want, honey, whatever you want. And that's why we're still married. But the reality is that made the build process so much better for us. And so I highly, highly, highly endorse getting somebody to help you with that design process. And who better than to have a real estate agent who has that service that's available to you. So pick up the phone and call the Packer Group. So number 8 thing you need to know when it comes to building a home, new construction in Metro Detroit: locations. So look, let's just logically think about this. So most Metro Detroits, or most metro areas, I should say, have the downtown area. And then it just builds out in concentric circles over and over and over. And Detroit wasn't unlike that, right? And so the only difference is that we couldn't build east because it's Canada. And so it's north, west, or south. And that's where the concentric circles built out to. And so most of the building right now is on the edge of the suburbs of Metro Detroit. And so you've got areas like, South Lyon or Orion Township or Milford or Brownstown and those areas. And so that's where a lot of the farmland was. And all these developers bought up the farmland, and a lot of them are production builders. And so that's the type of properties that are there for you to be able to build with. And a lot of that is production built homes. A lot of the semi-custom builder homes, the same type of things, like a Cranbrook or a Toll Brothers and things like that. They'll buy the land, they'll develop it, and then you can have kind of a semi-custom home built on something like that. And so that's going to be your typical concentric circles around the Metro Detroit to build in. But the other areas are some of the new resurgent areas that are we're seeing become very popular in Metro Detroit. Well, let's talk about Detroit itself. So you've got District Detroit where, you've got Little Caesars Arena, and you have Comerica Park and Ford Field and all that area. And around that area, there's just a lot of vibrant stuff going on, and businesses that are coming in, and restaurants and all that stuff. And so it's not surprising we're seeing a lot of new development of high density housing. And so whether that's a high-rise condo complex, or it's a condo community, or a site condo subdivision, we're just seeing a lot more housing starting to go up throughout certain areas of the downtown Detroit area. And so it's taking what used to be maybe a warehouse, commercial building, something like that, tearing it down and rebuilding and rezoning it to residential. So we're seeing those types of redevelopments that are happening. But also like Livonia. Livonia is a pretty big suburb in Detroit, and it was an aging suburb. So a lot of the homes were built in the 40s and 50s and 60s. And so what happened was there was a big need because it was a huge it was a huge suburb. So there was a big need for schools. Well, it aged out and now the schools are a little bit more empty. Now we see a resurgence of young people buying there, but they had lots of schools that were, had less and less students in them. And so they consolidated their schools and as a result, they were able to actually sell off some school property to smaller builders who then have turned them into subdivisions. And so we're seeing that type of stuff that's happening in some of our older communities. Certainly like at downtown Birmingham or downtown Plymouth, downtown Northville, we see a lot of older homes getting torn down and these big, beautiful homes being built in the place. So there's always these different types of build projects that one could consider and look into. So location matters, what you're looking for, what's important to you, and where maybe proximity to work, and what type of school district, things like that all could play into that. So that brings me now to our 9th thing to consider, and that is taxes. So taxes, it's important to explore this. I think so many people, taxes are an afterthought, and it doesn't hit them right away because in a lot of these cases, you're getting your first tax bill when you move into lots of these new construction opportunities is on whatever the land was worth when they divvied it up. And so you have a super small tax bill maybe that first year, but then it gets assessed and now you get properly taxed on what the tax basis should be. And all of a sudden that could be a huge surprise to you. Like, oh my goodness, I'm paying what in taxes? Is this right? And now it becomes a surprise, especially at a time where there's so many additional expenses in that first 1 to 2 years of new construction. Yes, I said that. People don't know that, but there's so many additional things you gotta pay for a new home that you don't always budget for. To get hit with like a really high tax bill that you weren't anticipating could be really uncomfortable for your budget. So when there are websites out there, and again, we'll put them in the description for you to explore these resources, but there's a website out there where you can put in 50% of the value of the new construction home, what county, what city, what school district, and it will tell you what you should plan for your budget for taxes. But this is one that oftentimes is overlooked and certainly can really diminish your experience when it comes to building a home and the financial obligation after you close on the home. So that brings me to the final 10th thing you need to know when it comes to new construction in Metro Detroit. And this is like, what's best for you? You, on the other side of this camera, you are a uniquely and wonderfully made human being. And you have certain things that are unique to what is important to you. Location, school district, taxes, budget, your experience, your expectations, all these things play into what may make the most sense. And there's a ton of advantages to new construction. Everything's new. You don't have to worry about like replacing a roof anytime soon or a furnace or a water heater. Those should have long, useful lives, windows, things like that. But there's also things that people don't always think about, such as like window treatments. Or the, now all of a sudden you're in a bigger home, so you've got like more things to buy for that home. When it comes to the other aspects of like, maybe you want security cameras, maybe you want a security system, maybe you've got smart home technology that you want to put throughout the home. And all of this stuff can be additional money that you put in that from a budget standpoint, you may not have actually factored in, such as like a back patio or deck, things like that. And so many people, there's so much money spent when it comes to new construction after you close on the home that it's alarming to people. They just didn't realize, wow, I had to do all this other extra stuff. So again, the experience of knowing somebody who's been there, done that, can really help you walk through this with eyes wide open, where your experience is a better experience. Because keep in mind, one of the things that people don't think about right now is like our supply chain has been massively disrupted. We're dealing with inflationary times. All of this stuff has impacted things. And so we've seen build times go from like what should have taken 9 months to now all of a sudden being 16 months because they had to wait for appliances. You know, if the person building the house was slow about making selections, once they make those selections, then we've got to get stuff shipped, and that could take a lot longer these days. And so builders are adapting, but so do the buyers need to adapt, and we need to be quicker about making our decisions. That's where a designer can come in handy. So what's the best way you go about this is so multifaceted, and this is why the 10th thing you really need to know is find a professional to help you walk through this process. A real estate agent who is experienced and has built a home before is your best asset, I promise you. And so we'd love to help you. Here at the Packer Group, as I've said always, we value our clients, making sure that their real estate experience is the best experience of their life. And so we would love to come alongside of you. So you can always call us, you can always get a hold of us, and keep in mind when it comes to selling your home or helping you buy a home, when it comes to new construction, we will do so where we put you first and we make sure that whatever your goals are becomes our goal. Hey, thanks for listening, but here's the deal. We want to hear from you. These were our 10 things we thought you needed to know, but what are the things we didn't cover? What are the questions you still have? Maybe you want us to go deeper into a question that we did go over already, but you want to know more. Ask those questions. We will get to every comment that you ask, I promise. And the thing you always need to remember, basement height. Did you know the average basement is about 7 feet 6 inches? When you go to build a home in new construction, did you know you can actually get your basement height higher? That's an important thing, especially if you plan on putting a golf simulator in your basement someday. So again, Jeff Packer, team leader, broker. Why can't I see that? Yeah. Feel the rhythm, feel the rhyme. Get on up, it's bobsled time. Cool runnings. And then he kisses the egg the egg rock that he keeps in his.
I forgot about that part.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Yes. Cool runnings. Yeah, man. All right. And I don't think that's ice luge. That's not luge. That's bobsled. No, I think they all push. Yeah, and then the steerer guy gets in first.
Yeah.
And then, no, maybe. Yeah, because I think they have all 4 of them pushing it at first.
Yeah.
I think so. You're sitting down and you like have these metal things on your knuckles and you're like doing that. And then you get into your position on your back and you're like in this weird position with your, have you ever been in that position where your chin's like to your chest for like an extended period of time? Like I gotta imagine their neck.
Oh yeah.
They probably have some major neck issues.